Mr. Graham McTavish.
Hello. Okay. All right. Hello. Yes, there we are. You can hear me. So, here I am.
How are you? Had a good trip?
Oh, yeah. It was, I came from Los Angeles. Yeah. So I came in last night. And my first time in Cincinnati. Not my first time. Not my first time in Ohio. I drove once across America with a friend from Toledo. So, somebody from Toledo? There you go. You see? Yeah, it was a long and interesting trip, which I won't bore you with now, but it was a long time ago. But yes, that's the last time I was in your good state. So.
Well, we're happy to welcome you back.
Well, thank you.
I saw an interview with you where you said you had, when you first started getting into the meetings for The Hobbit, with your 4-year-old daughter, you would wish upon a star that would work out, that you would get the part.
That's right, yes.
Were you, so you clearly knew what you were getting into.
Yeah. No, we'd do it every night, myself and my daughter, yes. We would watch for the star, yeah, and her and I would make the little wish. And yeah, it was just something that we did for quite a few weeks, actually. Yeah, there were 3 meetings, and they'd gone, each meeting had gone better than the last. So, and the final meeting was with Peter, Fran, and Philippa. And it was just, you know, there are some jobs in the business, some meetings that you go for, and everything kind of goes right. And that was the experience when I went in on The Hobbit. So yeah, I was lucky. I was lucky to be able to go into that room, and lucky to have the opportunity to try and get the role. So yeah, my daughter and I were very happy. I can remember to the day, to the moment, to the minute when I got it, September the 8th, 2010 at 3 p.m. I was outside the gym, and I got the phone call, yeah. And I rang my wife, and the second person I rang was a friend of mine who's a personal trainer, because I knew that it was going to be a very, very, very physically demanding ordeal. And so it proved. I'd done 3 months training before we started training as a group. And then we did another 3 months. And even then we were only really just ready for it. And some people, well, some people didn't train as hard as others. Mentioning no names, Peter Hambleton. Yeah. So he had a few hard days, let's put it that way. There a couple of times people collapsed. I mean, they just did. They just collapsed with the heat or the physical exhaustion. People broke down crying. It was, you know, there were some really mad days of just even the cobwebs, even the spiders' webs. If you're claustrophobic, of which, of course, if you've got 13 guys playing dwarves, statistically, one of them is going to be claustrophobic. Yeah, it was horrifying for him. And then when we did the barrel sequence, with the fish in the barrel, Peter chose 4 or 5 of us to do it, mainly out of sadistic pleasure, really, rather than for any other reason. Richard and I, and William, and Adam, and Mark Hadlow. Yeah. Now, Peter wasn't to know this, but Adam is actually phobic of fish. I mean, he has a fear of fish. I didn't even know such a phobia existed, but he's got it. And so he was placed in a barrel and had 400 pounds of fish poured on his head over and over again. And so that was pretty hellish for him. Yeah, we laughed, but it was, poor guy. He was the first, because when we'd first done it, we got the barrels only came up, the fish only came up to our chest, and that wasn't too bad. It was extremely smelly and all the rest, because a lot of people don't realize they were real fish. A lot of people think, oh, they can't be real. No, they were, and they stank. And so up to the chest was okay. And then Peter came on and said he used to speak into what he called the voice of God, which was like one of these things. So you wouldn't see him because he would be in a tent, like at some distance, because the sound stages were so big. And you just hear this voice go, more fish. And then we had to get into the barrel again, and Adam was the first one. And he got in the barrel, and Andy Serkis was doing second unit on it, so he was the closest one to it, because Peter himself doesn't have a fear of fish, but he hates fish. He hates being around them. It's incredible, really, isn't it? And anyway, Andy's doing the direction, so Adam's in the barrel, and there's a trough above his head, and there's a little wooden board that's stopping the fish going down. And they're just, I can see how much they're putting up there. Adam can't see how much it is. It's just, and some of them were, they're like that big, these things, huge. And they're piling up. And Andy's giving the direction. He's going, okay, Adam, you're looking out, and Bard's talking to someone. You're a bit suspicious. You don't know what's happening. You're getting agitated. Okay, and fish! And they pulled the trough, and it just poured, and literally, brrr, he disappeared before our very eyes. I mean, it was that quick. And, of course, because nobody had actually practiced this, because that would be too much like health and safety, which was something that they don't have in New Zealand. No, really, they don't. Nobody quite knew what it was like to be buried under 400 pounds of fish. And then they found out, because Adam could not move at all. I mean, you couldn't move the tiniest part of your little finger because of the weight of this fish. And he'd fortunately created a tiny air pocket in front of his mouth with his fingers, because that was the only way he was able to breathe, because he couldn't make any sound. And Andy was going, Adam, say something. Are you okay? Say something. And they were trying to get the fish out, but they could only get one fish out at a time because they were so slippery. And so it would take about 10 minutes to get the fish out of the barrel once he was in there. And the poor guy, and that's when we found out that he was phobic of fish. What a moment to announce it. So yeah, that was a hard day at the office for Adam. Yeah, so anyway, I don't know why I got onto that, but...
Did it cure him?
Did it cure? No, it did not cure him. No, in fact, every now and then I still think I can smell the fish.
Oh, man.
It's that, yeah, weird.
Were you a fan of Tolkien's work beforehand, or mainly just from knowing Peter Jackson and having seen the Lord of the Rings movies?
Oh no, I'd read all the Lord of the Rings books when I was about 18 when I read them. I hadn't read The Hobbit until I did, until I got the role, and then I read The Hobbit because I'd started with Lord of the Rings at 18. I thought, well, it's more of a kind of kid's book. I probably won't bother. And it is more of a children's book. But what Peter's done with it, with using some of Tolkien's appendices to make a bridge, really, between the two trilogies, makes it definitely more of an adult-themed series of films. So, but I had read those three, yeah.
And speaking of what he has done with them, and the way he's developed the story, and developed the characters of the dwarves, which there's a big group of guys and they can't all talk at once. And I remember you saying you were given, you were speaking in one interview about the character of Dwalin.
Yeah.
The warrior, the loyal lieutenant.
Yes.
How much of that, did Peter Jackson come along and say, you, Dwalin, this is yours, you, Balin, this is yours, or was it a lot of you brought it to the role?
No, we all, we had, during the 3 months of prep, we all got together and talked about our characters, their relationships with each other, how well Dwalin would know certain of the dwarves. And we decided, for instance, that Dwalin would have been obviously knew Thorin, Fili and Kili, and Balin very well. And then beyond that, there would be maybe relations that he knew a little bit, like Oin and Gloin. But certainly, for instance, the characters of Biffa, Bofa, and Bomba, we decided that he'd never met them before and really knew nothing about them and was extremely suspicious of them. So we decided to have those sort of relationships mapped out before we started filming. And certainly with my character, we decided, yes, that sense of him being this unbending, loyal, fierce warrior was something that came up in the conversations that we were having as a group. And so his loyalty was the last to be truly tested in the group. So yeah, that was a fascinating part of the process, those 3 months, for sure.
And it really that came out. It was the development and the sort of adulting of the story, if I may.
Yeah, for sure.
The book is kind of, well, I'll save it for the Middle Earth panel tomorrow. But does that, how's that translate? Now you're working on Outlander.
Yes.
How's that, do you bring that same sort of characterization process, again, based on books that exist?
Yeah. I mean, it is strange and I suppose fortunate to have been involved in two things that are based on very popular books. In the case of Dougal Mackenzie, I love the fact that he's very complicated, and that's something that I think we really worked on, the writers of the show and myself and the directors, to try and give him as many layers as possible when it comes to his interactions with the other characters, because there are characters in the book and the show who are much more just straight down the line. So you've got Sam, who plays Jamie. He's a straight arrow. He's a good guy. You know, he's not going to be going around doing anything terrible. And then you've got Blackjack Randall, who is just sort of evil incarnate. Irredeemably cruel. And then you've got Dougal, who I like to think lives in the middle. I don't think in any way at all he's evil. He's a man that will serve his own ends and use all sorts of means at his disposal. But he has a goal which is a good one, which is the restoration of the Stuart monarchy to Scotland. And to achieve that, he'll do pretty much anything. But to complicate that further, he also has this rather unfortunate attraction to very strong women who he keeps encountering and sometimes gets pregnant. And then he has his extraordinarily complicated relationship with his nephew, who on the one hand he loves and wants to help and look after, and on the other hand he wants to kill him. But that's probably not that strange in families. Certainly in mine. It's a great character to play. His complexity is the thing that really attracts me to it.
Have you got a favorite Dougal Mackenzie moment so far? I realize there's a lot more to come.
Well, I did enjoy the scene with Geordie and the subsequent scene with Katrina in the surgery immediately afterwards, because to me it perfectly encapsulated that twin dimension that he has. So you've got, on the one hand, somebody who deeply cares about the death of his friend, and on the other hand is very, very pragmatic about it as well. And when he goes to see Claire, the way he's able to sincerely thank her for what she did, and literally moments later just turn around and say, "But I still don't trust you." And I think that's very interesting, that he can remove himself in some ways from a situation and appreciate what the person has done without it affecting his view of them. That was probably one of the scenes I enjoyed the most.
That seems very opposite the Hobbit dynamic. The dwarves, they sort of are all in or all out, not very in between. No,
they're the dwarves are very they're like a little tribe, and they just stick together and trust They don't trust many other people. And Dwalin is the epitome of that. I mean, I don't think Dwalin, maybe he gets to trust Bilbo towards the very end, but up to that point, I think he's been deeply suspicious of him. Why does he keep turning up? How does he do that? Everyone else seems to just take it for granted. It's like, oh, there he is. He's like, yeah, well, how did he get there? I mean, one moment he wasn't there, and now he is. And he's equally suspicious of Gandalf. So, yeah, the dwarves are very clannish, and then clannish within their clans as well. So they're a tough bunch.
You've got quite a variety, too. You do a lot of video game voices and some of the big ones, too. I admit that's not my area, but the Call of Duty, yeah. How's that different?
Well, yeah, the video games. I mean, I have to admit, firstly, that I am terrible at playing video games. I am the guy that shoots in a circle around his own feet. The guy that you don't want to do a sort of co-op play thing with. No. So I'm terrible at it. But I do enjoy making them, and I've made some very good friends, especially the motion capture ones, performance capture ones like Uncharted and Dante's Inferno, and the most recent one I did was The Order 1886, which was a motion capture experience. And they're just great. They're like a combination of theater and film. So you get to know a group of people over, in the case of Uncharted, years.
Oh, wow.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I did 2 of them, and they spread over a period of probably 4 years. And so in some ways, I actually worked on Uncharted longer than I worked on The Hobbit.
Oh, man.
But it's just that the gaps were very big because they work around your availability. So
It was like coming home. It's like,
Yeah.
hey, how you doing? How you been?
that's right. That's right. So, yeah, no, they're fun. They're fun.
Have we got questions?
Yes,
You can,
please ask questions.
Come right on up to the mic. And
Come on over.
no,
Don't be shy.
really? Come on.
Yes, loads of people. Come on. Whatever you're thinking, you can ask it.
Just a question on Outlander. Big
Yes.
fan, as you know.
Outlander. Yeah.
And you're fabulous, and that the scene that you mentioned is just one of many. And if you haven't seen Outlander, please watch. It's on Stars. It's the production values are so fabulous. The cast. This man is wonderful.
Thank you.
Hope you survive season 2.
You will all be tested later, those who haven't seen it.
Just a question on the filming technique, and we hear from Ron Moore in some of his interviews about the blocking and how the scenes are done in blocks.
Yeah.
So you had many in the Great Hall.
Yes.
Were all of those filmed at the same time?
No. It depended on the episodes. So you film the episodes in 2-episode blocks. So episodes 1 and 2 were filmed at the same time, and you film them over between 24 and 26 shooting days. So you visit whatever sets you need to visit, and then, for instance, we did Rent episodes 5 and 6, but we did those after we'd done episodes 7 and 8. And so we were in the Great Hall, and then we were out of the Great Hall, and then we would come back in. But it was a sad day when they tore it down, down that set.
They're fabulous. We
Oh,
wish
yeah.
they would do tours. If you have any influence with Ron Moore or Terry or anyone, I'm sure there are people that would love to travel to Scotland and see some of this.
Well,
going
it's a
on.
great sadness that by the very nature, these sets are temporary. And when they are no longer needed for the shooting, they have to tear them down in order to put new ones in. And it was the same on The Hobbit. I mean, I think they did, it was something like 160 different sets on The Hobbit. And we're talking about sets, 4 times the size of this room, that they would have to move in overnight. And then the next day, sometimes move them out and bring in another one. And so it's the same with Outlander. They just burn through them. And one of the expenses of the show, one of the logistical problems of the show, is that the books seldom revisit the same place in terms of physical location in a set. So Castle Lear is no more. I mean, we're not going back. Well, in case anybody hasn't read the book, we're probably not going back. We might go back. We'll see. But so it's expensive. But the sets that they've built for all the French scenes are amazing, just in a totally different way. I mean, you believe you're in 18th century Paris.
We've seen some of the non-official photos. They're wonderful.
really?
One more quick question. We're anxiously awaiting the air date information. March, April, we're hearing.
I believe it's April, yes.
All right. Get back to work. We're
I
very
will.
anxious.
I'm leaving immediately.
Oh, sorry. You had one right. Battle of politeness.
Well, first of all, I want to say I'm a huge Lord of the Rings fan and also a huge Star Wars fan. And I think a lot of people that are Star Wars fan agree that the sequels are much better and the prequels kind of pale in comparison to those. And I hear a lot of people say the same thing about Lord of the Rings, that Lord of the Rings was really amazing and really great. And when they did the sequels, the prequels to them, The Hobbit, they didn't stand up to what everybody thought they were going to. And I was wondering what you felt about that.
What I thought about it. Well, I think it's difficult. I mean, I'm not sure about necessarily the Star Wars comparison because, they are very different. But, and obviously, while The Hobbit occupies the same world as The Lord of the Rings, it is a different story. So some people prefer the story of The Hobbit. They prefer the story of those characters, the dwarves, etc. And some people prefer what happens to the Fellowship in Lord of the Rings. And I also think that the expectations that people have of things are so enormous, because I'm sure Sean would be the first to say, maybe you'll get the chance to ask him tomorrow, he would be the first to say that people had no expectations of Lord of the Rings. So least of all the people making them. They didn't know whether they were even going to get a theatrical release. For a long time, they thought they were going to go straight to DVD, and they might only make 2. And so it all was a very pleasant surprise to a lot of people how successful and popular they were and how they gripped the imagination. And I think in some ways that can act as a bit of a curse on things that follow, because you can never live up to the expectation that people have of something that follows something like Lord of the Rings. I mean, I personally think that there are great moments in Lord of the Rings, and I think there are some not so great moments in Lord of the Rings. And I think it's the same with The Hobbit. Hopefully there are enough of the good stuff in both to keep people's interest. But at the end of the day, they are a different beast.
Do you think that if they would have filmed them in order of the prequels first and then the sequels, same as Star Wars, would we think we had better results in that case? Or
maybe. I think originally Peter wanted to do The Hobbit before The Lord of the Rings. That was his plan. But the way things worked out, I think it was a rights issue that The Lord of the Rings came first. So, yeah, who knows? Who knows? And also, there's, goodness me, so many variables with those stories. The stories of the making of the films, Sean Connery was going to be Gandalf. Yeah. And, he was going to be Gandalf. And you've got to remember that when they made them, well, what is he now? He's 85 now. So he would have been 69 when they were going into production. And that was who they wanted. And they really wanted him to do it. And he said, no. I've never read the books. I don't want to do it. So
very nice.
What is this shit? But yeah, there you go.
I'm glad I let him go first. I'm a huge fan of both series.
Yep.
Following the books as a teenager, 16, 18. And I just love what they did with The Hobbit and the special effects. What was it like trying to work with CG and especially Smaug and the 5 armies? Yeah.
Well, Smaug was that was interesting because they didn't even know what it was going to look like. When we were filming all the Smaug stuff, Peter himself didn't know what the dragon was going to look like. They didn't even have the concept art at that point. So Peter was the dragon. And so you would have, the little ball on the stick. I think the first time we filmed with any dragon sequence was the first time the dwarves are they run out on this big bridge, and Thorin's with Bilbo when we run out, and that's when we see the dragon for the first time. We all look around, and of course it was a ball on a stick. And you look at this and you do your suitable horrified. And Peter would think he was being helpful by doing all the noises. So he would be doing it like this. And really, you just wanted to laugh. It was the same with all the action sequences. He would be doing all the noises. Just like he was just a big kid. And he's attacking it. Oh, look over there. Oh, God, there's another walk. Oh, my God. And you're like, yeah, okay. We can imagine it. We don't need you to be all the other characters. But he loves being all the other characters. And on some days, you would rehearse, and if there was an actor who wasn't available because he was doing second unit or something, he'd be that person. And it was just hilarious. I mean, he probably played all of us at some point during the filming process. And of course, I wasn't there when he would be playing me, but I wish they'd recorded it. It would have been wonderful. So he got terribly involved. But the Smaug stuff, was tricky, the CG, because you're being asked to imagine something as big as this room, and now he's over your head. Now he's still over your head, and he's still there. Yeah, he's still coming. He's still going, and you're going, right? Is he gone yet? How big is he? We would have to do it a few times to get it right. Some people will be looking over there, and other people will be looking over there, and you go, no, it's over your head. All right. So, lots of shenanigans. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Sure, absolutely.
So I have read that besides Sylvester Stallone, that you are the only actor to appear in both Rambo and Rocky franchises.
That's right. That is
Okay.
correct.
Okay, my question is,
Yeah.
if the two characters were to go head-to-head, man-to-man,
Who Rocky and Rambo?
yes, no weapons,
No weapons.
no weapons, but their fists, who
Okay.
would you put your money on and why?
Well, that's a good question. I wonder. I mean, Rocky would be a hard guy to beat because he just wouldn't give up. But ultimately, the skill set that John Rambo has, you'd be hard pushed to beat that. I mean, he just, this is a man that can rip your throat out with his bare hands. I mean, how are you going to stand up to that? I mean, I can tell you that when we did Rambo, it was like being directed by Rambo. I mean, that he was Rambo the entire time. So, there was a lot of swearing. I mean, he was great. I actually got on really, really well with him, and he's got a wicked sense of humor, and nobody works harder than Sly on a set. I mean, that guy gives 110% all the time. He worked in every department. I mean, the one thing I can tell you is that there was a night where we were night shooting, and these pigs were involved, and the pigs were supposed to be eating the body of the guy that had been nailed up. Yeah, if you haven't seen it, that's what happens. Pigs eat a man in it. And anyway, he had the pigs, and they had the dummy of the guy, and he was on the cross there, and they just weren't eating. They were just kind of snuffling about, And Sly was like, "What the fuck?" And he said, "More food for the pigs. Bring more food for the pigs." And he would start throwing food in, and he got in with the pigs, because there's a guy whose job it was just to look after the pigs, right? That was his job, but Sly thinks he can do everybody's job better than they can. And often he's right. And so he grabbed this hoe. You call them hoes here, don't you?
Yeah.
Do you? The garden implement. Not the streetwalker. Yeah. He grabbed this hoe. Come over here, hoe. No. He grabbed a hoe, a gardening implement, and jumped in with the pigs. And he was chopping at the food to try and, get them to eat. And he was looking around going, "We need more food for the pigs," while he's chopping away. And suddenly the first AD said, Sly, you have to stop, Sly. And he went, What? He said, You've cut the nose off the pig. and he'd slice the tip of its nose off with the hoe. Oh, yeah. And actually, the pig was remarkably calm about the whole thing. And he looked at the pig, and he just went, "Sorry about that." And everyone was, sort of going, "Well, I mean, it's bad, the pig." And he goes, "Listen, it's a pig. I guarantee you it'll be back at work tomorrow." And it was. It was. But that's what he was like. He was very involved. So, but he'd win hands down. Actually, the more I think about it, he wouldn't. Yeah, God, it would be carnage. It wouldn't last long.
Thank you.
Hey.
So Outlander, firstly in the books and then more recently the series, has certainly educated people about Scotland,
Indeed.
Scottish history, and I think maybe especially for people in the States who we've had our own complicated history with the British, have learned so much and many people have felt this tremendous sympathy for the Scottish people, not just historically, but even currently.
Yes.
And it seems ironic, providential somehow that the referendum vote happened at the same time that the series began airing. And so has there been sort of this, maybe because of Outlander, this deeper passion about Scottish independence and so on?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting you should say. I mean, it's almost a year to the day that we had the referendum, but significantly, Outlander was not being shown in the United Kingdom at the time.
Yeah.
And in fact, it was delayed being shown in the United Kingdom longer than anywhere else. So the place that was the setting for the show was the last place that it was shown. So I think it's in over 90 territories now, and the UK was like the 91st territory to get it. And the rumor, and I have reason to believe it's true, is that there was pressure put on certain corporations to delay the deal with the UK at the behest of the UK government. Wow. And because I think because of its subject matter, would have contributed towards an upswelling, or that was certainly their concern, of independent fervour. But having said that, I am confident. In fact, I'm going to be meeting with one of the Scottish National Party MPs when I get back from here to talk about what I can do in involvement. Sam and I are very involved in the independence issue in Scotland, and we want to continue that. And I think that within the next few years there'll be another referendum, and I think this time it'll go our way. I really do. They tried every trick in the book.
Yeah.
They lied, they did everything that you would expect politicians to do, they did them. And but shame on you first time, or shame on me, or whatever it is the same.
Yeah.
But second time, watch out, because the Scots aren't stupid. So, yeah.
And then also, could you just talk about the multi-layered beauty of Scotland? That's been also something that we've been so much able to appreciate.
Oh well, yeah. It's a beautiful. Yes, it is a beautiful country. Scotland is a character in the show, and it was very important, I think, that they shot it there. There was a time when it was possibly going to be shot in New Zealand, but I'm glad they chose to do it in Scotland. I mean, there are a great many similarities between the two countries, geographically, but the key difference is the light. And the New Zealand light is very particular, very, very strong, very good for Middle Earth, because it gives it that otherworldly quality. I mean, when you go, if anybody's been to New Zealand, it almost doesn't look real, even when you're standing in front of it. Whereas Scotland has a much softer, muted light that gives it a beautiful texture. And it's been, especially episode 5, when we go out on the road for the first time, it was like a love letter to Scotland. It really was. And and we, a lot of us were able to go to parts of Scotland that we'd never been to before, much to our shame. And so it certainly had a big effect on tourism. I mean, Doon Castle, which is the setting for Castle Lear, is, I think it's 40% increase in its visitors since we started. So they're happy. But yeah, it's wonderful for me and for all the other Scots actors to be there working with, in my case, people that I came up through theatre with for years, you know, and I get to work with them on the show. So it's great.
Thank you.
Sure.
Can I jump back? You mentioned you shoot them in 2 episode blocks, 24, 26 days. Is that maybe a little more generous than usually allowed for an hour-long show?
Yeah, normally a typical American show, like when I was on 24, that would be 8 days per episode. Yeah. That's the norm, and this is 11, 12 days per episode. So it's just the nature of how we shoot it, because it's much more the cinematography is much more cinematic rather than televisual. Yeah. Yes, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, the production value someone alluded to earlier. Yeah.
The DP takes
really
a long
helps.
time setting up the shots.
Yeah. Okay.
So,
please.
Sir, I love it.
2
Fantastic.
quick questions. I was going to ask, could you tell us if you have any stories about working on
Right up in the mic.
working on Pushing Daisies or Lost? And
Pushing Daisies and Lost, yeah.
yeah, and then just do you have any new projects that you're excited to talk about?
Oh, right. Okay. Well, Pushing Daisies, little did I know that I was working with the future King of the Elves at the time. And little did he know he was working with, one of the dwarves. Very strange. And that's one of the wonderful things about this business, is that you can work with somebody and then years later you go, oh my God, it's you. But that was actually a really fun experience, Pushing Daisies, that episode. And it's not often I get to play comedic characters. And Hansel von Getz definitely fell into that category, the Swiss chef with the truffle love. Yes, it was quite bizarre. Lost was, very enjoyable for a number of reasons. Obviously, one, it was shot in Hawaii, which was very nice. Even though it was trying to double for Scotland, which was very odd. But the second reason was that Henry Ian Cusick, who was in Lost, but I never watched the show, so I didn't know he was in it. But I'd done a lot of theatre with Ian in Scotland, and it was only when I arrived and I looked at the call sheet, and there he was, and I was like, my God. And we met and worked together on the set, and that was lovely. So that was all good fun. Future projects, well, the Rocky movie, it's called Creed, coming out Thanksgiving with Mr. Stallone and Michael B. Jordan, and I play the trainer of the current world champion called Tony Bellew. And I'd not worked around boxers before, and some of you may be boxers, some of you may have worked around them or whatever, and they're a different breed. I mean, it's amazing. I have a massive respect for them now, and he was really good in it. I think he's going to really shine, actually. And the other one is coming out early next year, is called The Finest Hours for Disney, which is a great action true story based on possibly the greatest Coast Guard rescue in American history, and it was quite a physical shoot. Again, lots of water, but when you've done The Hobbit, everything. If you're wearing your own face, everything's easy. I remember I was standing next to Casey Affleck, who I did most of my stuff with, and we were getting drenched. There were rain machines, wind machines, dump tanks, the usual, constantly smashed with water. And Casey would be standing there between takes, and he'd be, oh, God, do we have to do another one? Why do we have to do it? And I would just be laughing. Be like, you think this is bad? This is nothing. You're not in a barrel. You're not floating down a river. You're not having fish thrown at you. Yeah. I mean, really, in the scheme of things, it was a walk in the park. But it's looking. I actually had dinner with the director the other night, and It's really looking great. The CG on that. I mean, I'm not necessarily a great fan of CG personally, but apparently the CG that they've done with the water, with the ocean, is going to set a whole new standard. It's quite extraordinary. It's the same people that did Life of Pi, the same crew. So yeah, it's going to be good. I think. Fingers crossed.
We're about to run out of time, so last question.
Okay.
No pressure.
First of all, my girlfriend was the one who sent you the tweet about having to have a spinal biopsy, so she wanted me to thank you for sending that.
Yeah. Oh, of course. I hope she's doing all right.
She isn't. They don't know what's wrong.
Okay.
But she pretended to be Dwalin with a war injury, so that was fun times.
Oh.
Anyway, my question is sort of piggybacking off that last animal anecdote. If Dwalin could have a pet, what would it be?
A pet.
Yeah.
Yeah, probably a pet that only he could control, I would imagine. Or maybe not. Maybe it would be something really cute and cuddly. That's the opposite of what you'd imagine. Like a
Hamster.
small little dog that he could carry around. Or maybe he had a pet the entire time of the movies, and we just never saw it. Maybe it was hiding, under his cloak or something. No, I don't know. If he'd had a pet... Oh, well, it was always Ori, I suppose. He could have had Ori as a pet. No, I'm trying to think. Well, it would have to be a Middle-earth kind of a pet, wouldn't it? Well, he'd probably try and tame a warg. I think he'd take that as a great challenge. Maybe one that was abandoned, lost, and everybody else was frightened of it, but Dwalin would probably go over and say, "Oh, no, he'll be fine, he'll be fine." Kind of a few bites and scratches. Maybe that's what the ear thing is. Maybe that's from his pet. Yeah, in fact, I'm gonna say it is from his pet. That he was savaged by his pet warg while he was toilet training it. Yeah. Now, what would he call his warg? I don't know. What? Who? What? Wargy. Yeah. Yeah. He could call him Wargy, or he could call him Balin. I think he'd probably, just out of meanness, he would do that.
Or if he really wanted to piss his brother off, you could call it Scholar.
Right. Yes. He would have an interesting relationship with the pet, though. That's for sure. Not necessarily a long relationship, but very eventful. Yeah. So either a Chihuahua or a Warg.
The spot pudding question. Do you have a favorite role of all time?
Oh, that I've done?
Yes.
Well, that's very difficult. I've been lucky with a lot of the ones I've done. Obviously Dwalin was a massive part of my life, so he would be one. Dougal, definitely. And actually, I have a very soft spot for Lewis and Rambo. He was much misunderstood. Sort of a bit of a softy sweetheart, really, underneath all of that. No, I tell you why. I mean, I like roles that you just can get your teeth into. And I mean, even something like Hansel von Getz in Pushing Daisies was great fun because it was such an extraordinary character. And if you're given those to work with, then you're always going to have a good time. That's not always been the case, but I've been lucky with having enough of those. So, yeah.
Thank you so much for being here with us this
Oh,
evening.
no, my pleasure. Thank you.